Welcome to episode 117 of the Necronama.com. I am James Sabata, horror author, screenwriter, co-host of the podcast you're listening to right now, and I'm still really angry about the title of this film. It was originally called Medieval Dead. How do you fuck that up?
And I'm Don Guillory, author, historian, educator, co-host of this podcast, and you gotta love a good wordplay. I mean, you don't run from it.
When I read that they thought it was too punny, I was like, did you not watch your film? Because I feel like punny was where you should have gone here.
Okay.
They're like, we need to set a serious tone with this movie. That's
all right.
Let's
introduce John.
It took me 45 seconds to get out to figure out what the pun was. That's the quality I'm going to bring to this conversation.
Perfect. You'll be ahead of me still. All right. So joining us today, John C. Foster is here. Welcome back to the show, man.
Thank you. It's great to be back.
You did our Exorcist episode last year.
Incredible.
One of those episodes that I'm not a huge Exorcist fan. Anybody that listened to that episode already knows this, but I was glad that I went back and watched it. And I don't know if you listen to our show at all. You can just lie and say yes, because we'll never know.
Yes.
And all the time. Yeah. Big fan. And literally, there's been so many movies since then that everyone's like, how have you not seen this, James? And I'm starting to wonder what the fuck I watched. Like, did I just watch really shitty slashers and that's what I thought horror was? I don't know, but I feel like your episode is what started me watching and rewatching things I hadn't either seen or hadn't seen in 25 years. So,
oh, good.
So you started me down a downward spiral that really ruined my last year. That's what I'm trying to say. No,
that's good. But I mean, come on, man, the 70s were the apex of horror in my mind.
Yeah, we've seen quite a few now from there. That's been interesting to talk about. I want to get into the really weird shit from that time, the stuff that's not popular, because I feel like if the popular shit is as weird as it was, then the stuff I haven't heard of has to just be crazy, right?
Have you ever done this wasn't the 60s, or excuse me, 70s, I think it was early 80s, but Lair of the White Worm by Ken Russell. Oh, that's an odd film. No, that was one earlier when I was talking about having to be careful which movies I try to compel my wife to watch. I got her to watch Lair of the White Worm, and I had to live with that failure for a long time. She wasn't a Ken Russell fan.
Man. Yeah, my wife would just probably divorce me then because she doesn't like anything I watch. So there you go.
Yeah, it's a thing. Anyway.
I feel like we should let the listeners know a bit about yourselves. So if you want to tell us all about you and the new book and whatever else, man, go for it.
I'm very handsome and charming.
Perfect.
As most writers are. No.
Handsome comes in really handy on this on our show because we don't use video. So
yes, I'm pale and I burn when the sun hits me. I'm a writer of horror and crime fiction, and I've had a bunch of horror novels come out in a collection as well. And my first crime novel drops on Tuesday, July 20th, which is kind of fun. And been writing for a long time, wanted to write since I was a wee lad, when I figured out I couldn't be a fighter pilot because I have glasses. And I started writing when I left Boston, drove across the country to Los Angeles without having been to LA or seen a screenplay, and decided I'm going to be a screenwriter. So that was the beginning of that journey. And
nice.
Yeah, and it was during that period that I actually wrote the thing that I'll talk about a little bit later, Rooster. That was an adventure, but I'm poorer now that I'm writing full time, but so much happier, and I'm always happy when people let me know that they've read something that I wrote and it gave them some pleasure. So it's a pretty good life. Oh, and I live in Brooklyn, and unlike certain people who are in this conversation, I eat cheese and mushrooms.
He took shots at both of us.
That's right.
Anyway.
Oh, I told you, man. I came to
See,
play.
you could have been a fighter pilot. Look how easily you did that.
That's
great.
Right.
I know he was able to get us from thousands of miles away.
That's right.
Is that really a thing? You can't be a fire. Good.
Yeah, you have
a fighter pilot with glasses.
Yep, you have to have at least back in the day. I'm assuming it's still now. Maybe surgery is okay, but yeah, you have to have perfect vision. Yeah,
Wow.
It's probably for the best since we ended up in 20 years of war.
Yes.
So, and I'm glad that I wasn't there because I don't like the desert.
No, I didn't know that was a thing. That's crazy.
It is a thing.
I mean,
it is indeed.
I guess it makes sense, but to me, I'm like, I just assume everything's computers, and as long as you can see the computer screen, who cares? But I guess not.
Oh, James.
See, this is what happens when you actively stay as far away from all of that as you can. You don't have to know these things.
So I like this. I like to look at my life path as instead of going to far off lands and bombing them, I get to stay in the States and bomb here.
So tell us about Rooster.
So Rooster, it's a crime novel, and the log line is basically a suicidal hitman finds a new lease on life when the entire criminal underworld rises up and tries to kill him. We're talking the mafia, the Yakuza, Chinese tongs, Russian mob. So there's a lot of running and fighting, and he's got PTSD, and he's an alcoholic from a lifetime of doing what he does. And I wrote this first as a screenplay in my mid-20s. I had written 2 very bad derivative screenplays that were just bad. And I finally decided, well, fuck it. Instead of trying to figure out what the trades are telling me Hollywood wants, I will write what I want to write. And I wrote this violent, awful, sexy, kinky, just throwing everything at the wall screenplay. And I ended up with a manager and an agent at a good mid-sized agency. And the first day, picture this nervous, 25, 6-year-old kid sitting in a conference room waiting for an agent to come in. I'm shitting myself. Agent walks in, a guy named Frank Williger, nice guy. But he had a pretty big name. And he walks in. First words my first agent said to me are, "You're sick." And that was the beginning.
I mean, is there any better compliment than that?
I thought it was pretty good, but at the time, I think my jaw was just hanging open a little bit because it was unexpected.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, but the screenplay was well received, but everyone wanted me to write other things like Jurassic Park sequels, and so I just sat on it for a long time. And after writing several horror novels, I just thought that it was still a really good story, and the spine of the story was very good. And so I just started rewriting it from scratch. And it also became, I moved to New York City in 2008, and it's always been my favorite city. I was always here. I didn't travel as much as you, James, but I used to travel a lot. And I used to spend about a week out of every month for several years in New York. And so it's kind of like a really blood-soaked love letter to New York City. So I'm very pleased with it.
Great description.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
But I'm looking forward to seeing how people think about it or what the responses are.
No, it's great. And like you said, it comes out on the 20th, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, so this episode will air on the 19th, so that works out
beautiful.
Well. So jumping from there to the movie we're going to talk about, quite different things. So what is it about Army of Darkness that made this the film you want to talk about today?
When we were talking about movie ideas way back when, and first I couldn't believe that no one had done it. And I know that not everyone is a fan of Sam Raimi. I think he's, kind of a particular flavor, but I really like him. Even the films that I don't love, he has such a style that he brings to things, and he really goes for it. And, the Evil Dead movies obviously put him on the map, and Army of Darkness was a huge step up in terms of story and budget and imagination. And I also remembered that it was funny, but now having just watched it again after not seeing it in years and years, I forgot how damn funny this movie is. The one-liners in this are just brilliant.
And they're nonstop.
Oh my God, they just don't stop. He's just, Bruce Campbell is friggin' hilarious.
What I thought was interesting that I did not remember at all was just how much he talks. And it's even just like, I'm going up the stairs, It's just like just constant talking while everything else is going on. And maybe I noticed it more this time because I watch movies with subtitles now.
Right.
But I was just like, this guy constantly talks. And you don't see that a lot in action movies and horror movies.
Right.
He'll like most movies, you get the one-liners, but you don't get I call them one-liners that fail.
Right.
And I mean, I think they work for Ash, but I'm saying like they're the kind of thing that I would do in my daily life. Don knows this, where I just constantly say something and some of them take and some don't. And I felt like Ash does that. And I don't think I've ever seen another character do it on this level.
Well, he does, because there's that, the whole moment where he climbs out of sort of the demon pit and he's alive and he's got the chainsaw on his arm and he pulls out the shotgun, which I'm not sure where the shotgun came from because they had taken it from him, but all of a sudden he has it. And he like blows a sword in half or something like that. Yeah. And he yells at them. And it's like, listen up, you primitive screwheads. This is my boomstick. And he's just ridiculing them because he's from the future. And later, I think the character's name is Sheila comes in, the one that becomes his sort of love interest. Yeah. And she's trying to flirt with him and he's making this metal, like cybernetic hand. And he just starts, and he's like, don't touch this. You wouldn't, you primitive, blah, blah, blah. You wouldn't understand alloys and metals and molecular structure. And you can see he's just full of shit because he works at the equivalent of Walmart, in like housewares.
I think that's what I like about it so much too. Like there's so much cockiness and ego for absolutely no reason. And he knows there's no reason for it.
Well, I don't know if it's for no reason, because you think about it. He's saying out loud what any of us probably would have said in our heads. We wouldn't have wanted to say it because it would have, it would have been awkward. It might have been rude. It might have been disrespectful, because if you are traveling all the way back in time to the medieval age, the Middle Ages, and you're dealing with whatever this is, you're probably thinking in your head, like, what the fuck do they know about any of this shit?
Right.
But then also, the idea that Ash himself is full of bravado, full of machismo. So it's kind of like, fuck you. I'm gonna say it to your face. I'm gonna let you know that I think that you don't know it. Even if I don't fully understand it, I'm gonna give you I'm gonna present it as though I understand it by demeaning your understanding of this.
Right. Well, there's even a line, and I think it's the King Arthur stand-in character with the long hair who looks kind of like Steve Perry with a mustache from Journey. But that guy sort of shouts at him. He's like, it says something like, is everyone from your time such an arrogant blowhard? And Ash just says, nope, just me. It's fucking hilarious.
I think he's wrong on that, but
right.
But yeah, no, I meant more like not that there's no reason, because I do think, like you said, it is a universal thing and we would do it. But I feel like he also knows that he's putting on a show as well. Like he's
right.
So
well, he has to awe the primitives so that they don't kill him.
Exactly.
It's also, I mean, talking about the one-liners, and I say this carefully but with intent, it's hilariously sexist. This film came out in 92, but it's so over the top with the types of things that he says. Like the first time that he and Sheila kiss, she's just slapped it. He just insulted her. I think it was after he said, you won't understand metallic structures and all that shit. And she slaps him in the face and she storms out, and he storms after her and grabs her arm and spins her around, and they're going to kiss. And then he says, give me some sugar, baby. It's one of those things that it's so over the top. They clearly knew how ridiculous it was. And so it lands funny.
No, I agree. I think that, I have this story that I've toyed with publishing, but I fear the response because I call it a toxic masculinity fantasy, because the main character is super toxic and totally misogynistic, but that's the point of the book, and I feel like Ash is in that same place. I feel it's so overdone that it's obvious that you're trying to push that, hey, we don't agree with this. Like, this is just this is Ash.
Right, you're making fun of it. It's
exactly.
At least with Ash, but yeah, it's tricky. I remember I wrote a story several years ago, and I wrote it when I first moved into Bed-Stuy. And And it was an unusual. I'm used to being in very diverse neighborhoods, but Bed-Stuy is a largely black neighborhood, and we were like the only white couple in the street, and that was odd, just because I was unused to it. Although Bed-Stuy is like the friendliest neighborhood in town, everyone loves us, and they give our dog hot dogs if they're grilling. It's ridiculous. But it was also at the time that Trump was running, and racism got really big, and so I wrote a story called Stuck Bucky. And it's about sort of a legend and such that I made up. But the character is a racist. He's a white racist, and he's his wife left him because he's kind of a loser, and she's married a university professor who's black, who's also really, really nice to him, and just everything is awful. And I when I first wrote it, I didn't go all the way with it because I was just like, yeah, this is kind of a third rail. And a buddy of mine in my writing group, he was like, yeah, if you're going to put this in the story, you can't just leave it in the background because it's a third rail. It gets everyone's attention. So either hit it or don't hit it. So I hit it. I hit it hard, and I think the story really works because of it. But I was very aware, and that was one of the few times I was very aware about thinking about backlash, particularly on the Twitters and all that, silly space. So yeah, I understand your hesitation.
I think Silly Space is a great name for the next social media craze.
Yes.
You can just see their front page now. Like, do you like fighting with people you don't know? But
I'm really trying to break myself of that habit.
Yeah. I'm that guy that will post things, and then when you fight back, I'm like, no, I wasn't trying to fight. I'm trying to get it out of me, not feed into it more. Yeah. So then I just delete shit, but off topic.
Yes.
But yeah. What do you think Ash would do with Twitter? No.
I think Ash would get banned from Twitter. So
like 3 minutes in.
Right.
I don't understand. I DM'd all these beautiful women. Right.
The other thing I love about Ash in this movie is that, sort of like with the gun, it's a double barrel, but has endless bullets.
Yes.
Somehow he went from being just a guy in Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 to now he's in this new world. We know from Evil Dead 2 that he knows how to fight with the chainsaw that's on his arm. But he also now seems to know karate. He's an expert shot. And later in the movie, when the Army of the Dead is coming, and he's sort of rallying the castle, suddenly he's teaching the infantry how to use pole arms, because he knows how to be a drill instructor with medieval weapons.
And one day.
Right. He trains them in one day, and you just go with it because this is Ash now. He's also a great horse rider. It's just hilarious that suddenly they just decided we need him to do this. Okay, Ash can do this. He can now throw a spinning crescent kick.
He's just super strength soldier man now. Yeah.
Right.
Like that was the other thing. Like it's not even just that he knows all this stuff. It's like nothing phases him. Like when he's in these battles, he can take every fucking shot and just keep going,
Right.
Maybe it has something to do with the book. He got too close to it. It's unleashed something on him,
I think they just decided to have fun. I'm not sure that.
Yeah, I think so too.
An actual logical underpinning here. But what's also fun about him is he's kind of a dick. When they ride up to the sort of the dark lands where he's going to go find the cemetery that has the book, and the wise man is telling him, the 3 words he must say before he picks up the book, Klaatu Barada Nikto. And so he repeats it once, and the wise man is like, be careful, you must say it correctly. It's Klaatu Barada Nikto. And he just snaps on it. It's like, yeah, I know the words. I'm going to say them. And of course he screws it up.
It's that bravado that gets in the...
Yeah, absolutely. And the whole, you can't tell me what to do because I'm from the future. Yeah. Well, I think that totally feeds into that.
And it's a crazy mix of, he obviously, he's got that ego and he isn't that bright in some ways, but later somehow the trunk of his car, because remember that like this horrible old Buick or whatever went through the time vortex, and the trunk of his car is full of books. There's also a copy of Fangoria, which was funny, but it's full of books, and it's like, the chemistry of black powder and how to make steam engines. And he's got all this stuff that you would want if you went back in time. So then he's teaching everyone how to make explosives, and they turn his car into the steam-powered killing machine. It's just crazy.
That's the car that Raimi puts in a bunch of his films, right? That's the same one.
It must have been in the first two Evil Deads.
It's also in Spider-Man, which I don't know what kind of car that is, but yeah, Uncle Ben drives it in the first Spider-Man. I thought that was interesting. Maybe Uncle Ben is Ash, but he grew his arm back. We haven't gotten to that film yet, but
maybe he grew out of Ash.
You never know.
Bad Ash.
That's right. There was a separate Ash. There were also little Ashes.
That's the one part of the film I don't like. I don't know what it is. They annoy the shit out of me.
They are annoying, and it's a very silly sequence. It's a point where the movie veers totally into comedy,
which you would think I would like. I mean, that's my thing, right? But it does not work for me.
I just think it wasn't the right kind of comedy for you, or at least it may have been. I don't even want to say the right type of comedy because that was 30 years ago,
right?
Because it has that, it has that Gulliver's Travels feel of these pixies, these little small sprites, capture him, tie him up, fight him first, but then tie him up and then insert one of them in his mouth in order to create a copy. But yeah, there are a few movies that have kind of done the same thing with respect to taking that break, and it's like overly kind of goofy, silly, out of place. And it is hard to, at least from the movies that I've seen them do something like this, it's hard for you to really get that to fit in just right.
It's interesting. This made me actually think of something more serious about this film, that even in that sequence and really through the entirety of the film, obviously the skeleton undead army that comes out of a graveyard and all that stuff is evil in the classic sense.
Right.
But when we first meet him, his first line is, "I am a slave." And he's in a line, he's wearing a yoke along with some soldiers of Duke Henry the Red. And they've all been captured by the people in the castle that he ends up defending. But those people in that castle, they're jerks. They're beating him with whips, and they're going to throw him in the pit where the Deadites live to tear them to pieces. And they're all cheering and laughing. And they're really, the notion of good and evil is... there's a real question. These are, if you were, Dungeons and Dragons, these people very much live in the realm of the neutral. And even Ash has a line later when his doppelganger, the evil doppelganger, sort of breaks free and is sort of beating him up and stuff like that, and talking about, how he's the evil one and da-da-da. And Ash suddenly pulls the gun off his shoulder and shoots him in the face. And he just says, with that great, almost Clint Eastwood voice, "Good, bad, I'm the one with the gun."
Right.
And that's really kind of the morality of the movie when you get past the humor.
Yeah, and when he delivers that line, the thing that I wrote down was good and bad is based off of subjectivity.
Right.
And the idea of, with a lot of the films that we've discussed, where they mix action and horror, or just their straight horror, there's always this discussion or an analysis of who exactly is the good guy, who exactly is the bad guy, and it all depends on what lens you're looking through,
right?
And who's telling the story. And even from a historical standpoint, there's an old line, and it changes based off of culture, but it's basically the person who wins the war gets to write the history.
Right.
History is written by the champion, by the winner. History is written by the murderers. I mean, there's so many different ways that it's done, and there's this great quote. I don't think it's ever been attributed to anybody, but because it's a proverb, that might be why. But the history of the hunt will always glorify the hunter.
Mm-hmm.
And just thinking about that, that one has been used in so many ways to talk about how, if the lion doesn't, or whatever animal is being hunted, if that animal doesn't have a historian, doesn't have somebody to capture them, the hunter's always going to be the hero in the story.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, I think as much as I don't really care for the little guys, I mean, this breaks down exactly what you're talking about. It's a literal reflection of Ash.
Right.
And now they're the bad guys because they're attacking him. It's the same. Like they're annoying little assholes. He's an annoying little asshole. I mean, they're smaller, but you know what I'm saying.
Well,
Yeah,
when he's fighting back, there's this scene where it's shot from their perspective, and he's singing "London Bridge is falling down," and he's going to stomp on them, and one of them holds up a nail, and he steps on that, but he's doing it with great malice.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's not in that. One thing I like about horror in general is that quite often it plays within sort of the rule set of good and evil as we would expect through a Judeo-Christian lens. But quite often it goes away from that. And the notions of good and evil, have nothing to do with heaven and hell or anything related to that. And this story plays there.
Right.
Good as it was opposition to the undead army and kind of loyalty to the people in the castle.
Yeah, I mean, even the fact that the two warring factions hug at the end.
Right.
Like they've changed who the bad guy is.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, yeah, I totally think that that's a theme that runs throughout this entire film.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting and that's why I like Sam Raimi. I think that he is clever about inserting some depth when you could easily just, like a rock skipping off the water, just glance off the surface with the brilliant one-liners and things like that. And the crazy action scenes.
Absolutely. Don, what do you got in your notes?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of things that came to mind when I was watching this, and a lot of things that I wrote down. But to follow up with the good and bad, there's that part where the pixie grows inside of Ash,
mm-hmm.
Even after Ash, pours boiling hot water down his throat. Where he starts growing and eventually creates a copy, and you see how there's this struggle between him and his copy, or his doppelganger, his carbon copy, whatever you want to call it. But when the other one grows out, he looks at him and says, "I'm bad Ash, you're good Ash," right? And for me, it became one of those things because I haven't seen this movie in forever,
right?
So there was so much that I forgot about. I think I've seen Evil Dead more recently, actually more times and more recently than I've watched this one. And again, it becomes that thing of perspective. Why would the one that's now created, brand new to this world, immediately assume that he's the evil one, or at least immediately state that he's the evil one? I mean, is this an issue of, Ash has some good in him, and it's just an issue of he doesn't act upon it. He doesn't do what he should be doing to be a good person. When you see a lot of the time, it's about the selfishness or the necessity of, well, fuck you and your words. I'll remember it when I get there. Or it's, I don't know. The only reason why I care about this book, damn it to hell, what you guys need the book for. I need the book so you can send me back to my time.
Right.
Nothing else about making sure you guys are safe, that the warring factions have peace, anything like that. And it goes to the end, when he's telling his story, and it's this whole story that kind of glorifies himself again, where he talks about, well, I could have been. And everyone in the store is kind of like, yeah, whatever, bullshit,
right,
whatever. And you're just thinking to yourself, like, why do you need to tell people this story?
Because he's a little guy who works in housewares. It's the thing is that that I'm evil Ash, you're good Ash, but he wasn't good Ash. He was
right.
He was still self-centered, self-serving Ash, and the evil Ash was what I think of as sort of the gleeful evil, or it feels so good to be bad kind of evil, as opposed to truly diabolical, like
right.
Like Captain Howdy in The Exorcist, which is just pure evil.
Yeah, it's I guess it's that purposeful evil, where, or I should say malicious evil, versus mischievous evil. You're doing shit, and I think probably the best comparison would be like, with Loki, the MCU character, or even the Norse mythological character, where he's not necessarily doing it to really hurt anybody. He's doing it because it's kind of like that's his nature. That's what he's supposed to be, or Puck in Shakespeare, Like this whole thing of like, I'm just here to screw around. I might screw some things up, but oh well, that's how things go with me.
Yeah, and certainly in MCU, they're always referring to Loki as the god of mischief, which is an interesting idea because, like, going back to MCU, when Hela comes back, she's evil. She's flat out evil, and Loki, in comparison, is not evil. Loki's more of a pain in the ass.
Yeah, I think we lost James with the MCU discussion.
Oh, sorry.
That's quite all right. The show isn't about me. It's about the listeners. Mushrooms.
That's right. I thought maybe you were sampling some mushrooms or something.
I was eating blocks of cheese over here.
Oh, right on.
No, I was actually fascinated by what you guys were saying, but thank you for making it about me. That's what I care about.
Well, before you can even look at that when it comes to crime in the real world, right? There's some people that don't understand why they might be more prone to getting in trouble. And I don't mean as far as like people who specifically go out and kill somebody. I mean, as far as the idea of you have people to give the old ethical question of, is stealing bread for your starving family a crime? Is it a bad thing? And I think when you're driven to do things out of necessity, whether that is, foraging for food during a crisis, or if somebody wants to call it looting, they can call it looting. But if there's a natural disaster and there's a grocery store there, is it wrong for you to break into the grocery store that's been abandoned to steal some food? To take some food in order to redistribute to people in the community or feed people? Because that food, let's just say it's New Orleans, that food is going to get all flooded out. Right. So is it really something that's, you have some people that their moral compass is, I can't do it no matter what. I can't do that. And you have others who say, well, there's a line, and this is obvious the line. This obviously is the line that I can cross where there is no ethical or moral dilemma.
I'm definitely on that side.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that you have a good number of people that, especially kids, because I'm sure for all of you who are parents have probably had your kids ask this question, like if they get in trouble, they'll say something like, I don't understand why I keep getting in trouble. Not as far as like the punishment, but like why they're making the decisions that they're doing, making the decisions that they're making that get them into trouble, and have that quandary as to whether or not they're doing it because they're bad. And hopefully, no one goes and tells their kids that they're bad. But the discussion I typically have with my kid is, you're still learning. Like, you're going to make mistakes. Hopefully you'll make the right decisions, the right choices from here on out, or at least more right decisions. But we sometimes do stuff. We don't know why the hell we do it.
Well, it's interesting. One of the things that I love about horror and about noir is that very frequently we have those characters who it is in their nature to make, in both genres, quite often bad things happen because people made decisions that are in their nature, and they're not necessarily the greatest decisions. There's a great book by Megan Abbott, who everyone should read. And she generally writes stories now, and there have been TV shows made of her, movies and shit. She generally writes things set in the present day now, but she's a big fan of the classical noir writers like Dashiell Hammett and Raymond Chandler. And she wrote a book called Queen Pin. And it's fun because it's all sort of through the female gaze of very classic noir. The language is brilliant. But the protagonist is like 20 years old, young woman, and her dad is, poor but honest, bus driver or some shit like that. And she gets a job doing the books for these sort of cheap bottom rung guys that have like some shitty dinner casino. And when they tell her that she needs to keep 2 sets of books, she keeps 2 sets of books. And this woman known as the Queen Pin, she's basically, in a time when women's, I don't even know if women had the vote then. But the Queen Pin was a gangster leader. And, she was stunning. She was sexy, deadly. And this girl, raised by a good father and an honest, household, they got crosses on the wall and all that crap, was just drawn to the Queen Pin and ends up becoming basically her protege and learning the world of crime and the hustle and scams and fraud and all that stuff, because it is her nature. And she's not evil, and it's very easy to, empathize with this character and all that, but she just isn't satisfied with the life, working in a restaurant or driving a bus or whatever. She wants the glamour. She wants that danger. And it's fascinating to have characters like that. And I've gone way off topic, but
no, I don't think you have at all. Like, I think,
but I don't think that good and evil really applies there, or at least that Judeo-Christian good and evil.
But I mean, I think that that's exactly what Ash is doing. Like, Ash's nature is to take care of himself. And in order to take care of himself, he has to go get this fucking book, but he doesn't want to deal with people. So it's in his nature to not pay attention to the words. He doesn't think it'll make a fucking difference. It's in his nature to ignore these people because he thinks he's better than them. Like, I think all of this plays in. I don't think you're off topic at all, man. Okay, good.
Yeah, it is interesting, and it's funny that they managed to make the scene work in such a crazy movie, where at the end, they knew doom is coming. They only have 60 men in the castle, and yada yada yada. And he has this big, inspiring speech that he's going to stay and fight. And this is after he's already said that I'm leaving, I'm out of here. And it was kind of a great moment. And no one, he's like, "Who's with me?" And everyone's quiet. And finally, the blacksmith, "I'll stand with you." That was my English accent. I give trigger warnings before readings if I have accents, because I can't do them, and they're always really, really bad.
Trigger warnings. No wonder Twitter hates you. No.
Yeah.
I can resist. That's completely on me. Anybody that wants to send hate mail.
So, send it directly to him, and you begin with "You dick, you cheeseless, mushroomless dick." And it's funny because, my wife she narrates audiobooks, and she's also a dialect coach. So when actors and narrators and stuff have to work on a specific type of dialect, they'll come to her and she'll coach. And I can't do accents. I in fact, the only accent that I have, whatever I start trying to do ends up in what we call Mexican genie. I lived in Los Angeles for a long time, so I heard that, sort of the sort of Mexican inflection of English. So I heard that a lot. And then we have our friend Jeannie is from Taiwan. And so she has she has great English, but she has a notable accent, and she has sort of a high pitched voice. And so I become a Mexican Taiwanese woman after about 20 seconds of trying to do any accent. Irish, Russian. Yeah, I become Jeannie if she was from Mexico.
But at some point this will pay off. I don't know when. I don't know what your day is, but one day that's jackpot. So you're going to be all right.
Well, if I ever need people to leave the room, I could just start doing an accent.
There you go. Speaking of your wife, she just won the award as well, and
that's
awesome.
Pretty exciting. It's in her office now.
I love that. She did the narration for Laurel Hightower's Crossroads, which is my favorite book last year. And obviously, Laurel's one of my friends, but she does not pay me to say this. If anything, she probably tells me to shut up because she knows people don't like my judgment of things.
No, so she's not paying you. She's paying me.
Well, I mean, good. As long as somebody's getting paid, that's what matters. But no, I was super. I had no idea that your wife did the narration for it, so I thought that was really cool when I found that out.
Yeah. We're not. Laurel is really cool. First of all, and that book, talk about it. It's a great book with some genuinely creepy horror shit in it. But boy, it's a straight right cross, bang right in the heart.
I just tell everybody that it's a heartbreak in a paperback, and I feel like this is still on topic. Trust me, I'm going somewhere with this. But what that book did for me is it's pure depression. That book will take you down, right? But I read it during COVID when I was already at my lowest point,
right?
And somehow reading it made me feel less alone. And so I'm kind of looking at Ash, and I'm thinking, if I was pulled into this other world, I don't know anybody. Like when we meet Ash in this film, he's on his way to death, right? Like he is alone, and I don't know. Like I feel like maybe there's something there with Ash where everybody else, he kind of starts realizing they're alone too. Maybe not as much, like not straight out, but I think that he starts like identifying with these people more, like he starts seeing his own struggle with what they're going through. And that's why he makes that speech. I feel like Ash found a family when he didn't mean to.
Could be. Or maybe he kind of accepted responsibility. which he's not great at doing.
Or he was just really excited to keep killing people.
Right, could be. But
Maybe I'm way off. Maybe that's it.
He knows that he screwed up the words.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't listen. He didn't practice the words. He screwed them up. He unleashed hell. And, people wanted to stay, and he was being selfish and being very Han Solo. And that's also, come on, that's a storyline we all love. That redemption storyline, the selfish rogue who becomes a hero is just wonderful. Because the heroes are dull. They're boring.
There's too many rules.
Right. Well, and they're not fun. I mean, Ash will steal some shit, and Ash will insult people. And then it turns out Ash will also teach your medieval infantry how to fight. I love that. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. It's just hilarious and brilliant.
No, but I think that really brings Ash, like when you look at the other movies, like this is the point where he does accept responsibility. Mm-hmm. And that's so huge for his character.
Well, and when he's back at the end, when he's back at S-Mart and he's telling the story and then, there's the one bored guy who's, clearly kind of just humoring him. And then there's a woman who's another employee, and she's like, I thought it was kind of cool. And then it turns out that one of the customers turns into a Deadite. Right. And Ash immediately goes to battle. And he could have run. He didn't need to do it, but Ash, he knows what his job is at this point. He fights Deadites. And it was cool. It was really fun. And again, there's another thing. He managed to he got a gun from the gun rack in the store.
A Winchester.
A Winchester. Right. With one of those lever action things. He loaded it up with 78 rounds or something like that. And then
as one does.
Right. Instantly. And
well, he's in housewares.
Right, but he got punched all the way into this sporting goods firearms section because he went flying through the air.
I was trying to just use that as a justification. Well, I mean, he's in housewares, so
But it's and again, and there's the kind of sexism that goes over the top. He does the brave thing. He destroys the Deadite. Everyone's cheering him or whatever, and he takes the woman who liked him and he sweeps her off her feet to give her a big kiss, and it's so over the top. It's like you can tell that he's watched Indiana Jones and saw no subtlety in it. He's like a really unsubtle Indiana Jones drawn in magic markers.
And here I thought this whole thing was a ripoff of Bugs Bunny and the retelling of a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court. I didn't know.
Well, definitely something. But come on, who of us did not read that book and other books when we were kids and memorize the formula for black powder?
Mm-hmm.
The ability in Connecticut Yankee, he also managed to create like an electric fence, and I don't know how to do that. But beginning to develop a steam engine, which was something that I remember learning from Philip Jose Farmer in his Riverworld books. Because once you get a steam-powered engine, you can make steam-powered fully automatic weapons, too. So these are the critical things. So actually, I think I would have done a lot of what Ash did. I think I would have gone in and made weapons and explosives, but I would have just set myself up as like a sorcerer somewhere. Bring me mutton and mead. Not mead. Mead sucks. Wine, and leave me in my tower.
What about you, Don? What would you have done?
Oh my God! I actually wrote that question down. As far God, I don't know. I mean, I've thought about that so many times, and we've had this discussion about time travel and all these other things. I think I would. I probably would have taken over.
Yeah,
I would.
I don't know.
I don't know
if I would have gone. I don't know if I would have gone to back to my own time, because what's the guarantee, considering that you've gone back in time? Mm-hmm. What's the guarantee that you haven't fucked things up on your own timeline?
Well, and additionally to that, things are going pretty well here, and back there you're working at S-Mart. I mean, I don't know.
Right. It is housewares, but still.
Well, yeah. I mean, he probably worked up to housewares. That's the dream. So.
Yeah, he was out collecting carts when he started, when he was just behind the ears.
For me, I mean, I would have just died instantly. So
yeah.
But yeah, that would have been the whole story. It would have just been me going to the pit and then crying at the bottom of the pit, and then, the big blood spray. I think that guy right before him, that was me.
That was hilarious. There was so much blood. That was Old Faithful geyser of blood. Like 30 people died to create that much blood. It was amazing.
I love how absolutely Sam Raimi that is as well. Like that's such a Raimi thing to do. You know, I think it's Evil Dead 2 where the blood just keeps spraying like way longer than it should. And
right. It's hilarious. It's brilliant.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff I love from him. I think I said this off air. If not, I'm repeating it. So fuck you all. It's too late. But that's what I love about him. It's that whole thing where it's like, it's not funny. And then it continues so long that it is. Right. And then it continues so long that you're like, they're obviously in on the joke. Like this didn't just go too far.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff I love. Like when Ash runs through the cabin in Evil Dead 2 and the cabin just keeps going.
Right.
Like, you know, stuff like that. That's shack. The stuff I love. Yes. Yeah. So this blood spray was like fucking made for me. That's like the part where I was immediately like, yes, now we're talking, you know?
It's interesting. It's interesting. And I know you want to talk about some other movies at the end, but just to bring up Drag Me to Hell. You've seen that?
Oh, yeah. Yes. I love that movie.
Yeah. And it's interesting because that's one where you get, especially early on, there's some stuff that is kind of like Deadites, but it ain't funny. And he's serious. And that movie's actually, particularly because, you know, the woman who's being attacked by the demon, she loses. She goes to hell at the end of the movie. And that one's, it's sort of wild to see a guy who can be so funny and successful create a movie that is just relentlessly actually scary and violent. And we the audience lose at the end of this movie, which is brilliant.
Yeah, Drag Me to Hell is one of my favorite Raimi films. My all-time favorite is Spider-Man 2, but you know, what are you going to do? But no, going back to this blood spray really fast, I really feel that's exactly what would happen to me. I would have just been toast. I wouldn't be the main character. I don't know. So I don't believe Don. That's what I'm saying.
Wait, you don't believe that Don would take over?
No, I think he would die with me. Yeah.
Oh.
I think
I'd probably push you in.
That's true. That is true.
I think I could take a Deadite or two if I had a weapon. I don't know. Hand to hand seems not great. But a chainsaw or a sword, I feel like they're not that great. They're kind of obvious. They're not subtle.
Talking about the Deadites, I love the scene where they're rising from the dead. And they're like, welcome back to life. Here's a shovel. Start digging.
Right.
You know, like.
There's one where there's a skeleton who can't, he's like old man skeleton. He can't get out of the grave. So two of them grab his arms and they help him up. And he's like with a grunt and he's like, thank you.
Yeah. That's the little stuff I love. Like, you know, I'm so used to zombies just crawling out of graves. And I'm always like, were you not in a coffin? What's going on here? You know, I love that they went the extra mile to put this in. And this scene, I love this fucking scene. This is one of my favorite scenes in the whole film. Like just watching all the different things. There's so much characterization in each of these different dead, undead things. Mm-hmm. Like, it's so great. There's just so much going on that it's a scene that every time I watch it, I see something new or, you know, just appreciate it more.
Sorry, that's just me. I don't know why that prompted it. Near the end when, remember Sheila was captured by the dead evil guy. And became sort of demon possessed. And she decks Ash in the courtyard of the castle during a big battle. And she's standing over him looking all monstrous. And she's like, you once considered me beautiful. And I think his line is, you got real ugly.
Yep.
Yeah. It's just, I love it. He really does. He's kind of, I think he's a creature of id. He doesn't have a great governor over what he says.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
That's what makes it.
Right. Yeah.
Or at least one that works in this situation.
Yeah. One of you guys mentioned it earlier. He says the things that we're all thinking, but wouldn't necessarily say.
Yeah. Don't be like Ash. That's what we're saying here today. No.
Unless you're back in time with primitive screwheads, in which case you need to exert dominance.
Yeah, that works.
Or you'll turn into a 20-foot high fountain of blood, and no one wants that.
That's for sure. Man. Don, you got anything else in your notes?
has that, going back a little bit earlier, when he has that moment where he's trying to remember the words, I had to laugh because when he screws it up, he's like, and he's like, it was definitely an N word. Right. And again, I haven't seen the movie in forever. And of course, probably at the time I wasn't thinking too much about it. But that moment where he does the whole Blazing Saddles, the sheriff is that scene. Right. Where I'm sitting here and like, he's not going to do it, is he? He's not going to do it. And then it's like, and kind of coughs as he's saying, I'm like, that's funny. Not just because he said that in that way, but the fact that he looked over both of his shoulders.
Right.
Yep. As if someone was going to pop up and say like, hey man, hey, no. But the fact that he looked over both of his shoulders, unsure, still didn't say the words, right? But he kind of gave that indication of like, for the audience, that wink, wink, like, yeah, you guys should be in on the joke. I thought it was great. I thought it was great for them to include that.
It was really funny.
I was literally just sitting there going, please don't say it. Please don't go there, please. So. But no, the way it went down was great. Yeah.
It's also funny that, in this universe, where they're just, Sam Raimi is walking right up and saying, yes, a double-barrel shotgun will shoot 30 times. He's like, deal with it. And also, the Necronomicon Book of the Dead, they not only stole the Necronomicon from Lovecraft, the Book of the Dead they stole from either the Tibetans or the Egyptians, depending on what mythology you're looking at, and they just kludged them together. I just love it. They do it and they look you right in the eyes without guile and say, oh no, we're just kludging these things together because we can.
That's kind of like Ash talking to everybody else, right? Like, you don't know I'm bullshitting you. Deal with it.
Right.
It's the same kind of feeling. I've never heard of the Necronomicon. So now you bring up Lovecraft, and I think it's interesting. Like obviously that's the name of our podcast, and I think it's interesting how I will have people that think it's just from the Evil Dead series.
Oh wow!
And I'm like, I don't correct people because I can never tell. Like, are you kidding? Are you like? Is this important to you and I don't want to destroy it for you? Are you just really anti-Lovecraft? There's many different things that could be going on here. But I've had it happen probably 4 or 5 times in the 2 years that we've had the show. And it always I'm like, really? Huh. So, yeah.
So I should not ask their names and make fun of them, right? That would be inappropriate.
I definitely won't DM them to you later. No.
No, but again, this is one of those things that's sort of where did you sort of enter the time stream of horror? Right. And it's, and what's your, what is your age? How did you come to it? Did you come to it through TV and movies, or did you come to it through books? I had Lovecraft books because I liked the covers when I was in high school, or actually it was right after high school. But that was, like, 1990. So that was, a long time ago. And a lot of people are coming to things. The word Necronomicon is such, it's so much in common use now in entertainment and horror entertainment in a way that it wasn't back in 1990 when I bought those Lovecraft books. Yeah. So it's actually easy to understand why people wouldn't know where it came from. And if you're watching, I don't know, some TV show like Supernatural or whatever, which I haven't watched, but if they started talking about the Necronomicon in an episode, I wouldn't be surprised because it's that much of a thing now. It's kind of like, when a brand like Kleenex, just becomes part of conversation. You use Kleenex, as an alternative just for tissues. But Necronomicon is so common now just as a term, and everyone has an idea of what it is. But it is interesting to think that it's not all the same idea.
Right.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. Like I always think about where do you know Tim Curry from? Same sort of feel. And now I'm sitting here listening to you and I'm like, I wonder where my kids know the name from. Like, do they even know? Like, because I don't think that my 19-year-old has seen this film. I don't think he's read Lovecraft. So like, I'm like, do you think it's some crazy shit I made up for the site? That's fascinating to me.
I'm glad you mentioned Lovecraft because I thought we were still talking about Tim Curry, and I'm thinking of Transylvanian transvestites. And
I always think of Legend. I think Legend is probably the first.
I don't think I learned that he was that guy, the devil guy, until like somewhere in the last 5 years.
Well, if we're going to go back to Tim Curry, then I'm going to go with Clue because that's one of my all-time favorite movies, and it's the thing that I saw the most with him when I was younger.
I've never seen Clue.
Oh my God.
But I like that kind of movie.
If you watch Clue, I will eat a mushroom and Don will have some cheese. That's not true, but we'll tell you that we did.
I'll do it. Just fake the sounds. Fake the sounds of dying and crying. I was
gonna say, there's Photoshop, so I mean, you can make it happen.
I will. If you will put in the effort to Photoshop that, I will watch this movie. No, I like that kind of movie. What's the movie with? It's like Michael Caine and the guy who Christopher Reeves. It was a play initially. It's called Murder something or.
I don't know.
I don't recall.
Oh, it's really good. If you like Clue, you'll like it. When we're done with this, look up Christopher Reeves and Michael Caine. And it's like one of them is a playwright or something like that. Yeah. And they're kind of trying to set each other up for murder. And it's just fantastic.
I'm going to check it out because that sounds right up my alley.
Yeah, it's really
cool. Yeah.
And anything with Michael Caine is good except for Jaws 4: The Revenge.
That's fantastic.
Yes.
You were talking about the end of the film where they're in S-Mart and all the craziness that happens. And I don't know if you know this, but the original ending was different.
I don't.
And I was reading that originally Ash drinks too much potion and fucks up the words. And he ends up in a post-apocalyptic world, like in the future of where he's trying to get to.
Oh, geez.
And I thought that was so great. And I'm almost mad about that. Not as mad as, like, I don't know, if you changed the title from Medieval Dead, for instance. But that's such a, and it sucked because I read this before I watched it. So then as I'm watching the ending, I was like mad. I was like, no, I really want to see this other ending instead. But yeah, I wanted to quickly ask you guys, what do you think of that ending as opposed to what we have?
You want to go first?
The alternate ending would have worked because that would have fit in right with Ash's character of I guess the continuity of screwing things up. So that would have been a fun one to have.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would have fit in with him. He screws things up, and also we now know that he will never escape the dead eggs. That
right.
This is here. He's going to have to deal with it forever. That being said, the contrast of going from medieval war against the army of the dead back to shop smart, shop S-Mart is pretty funny.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I think about how hard it is to go back to a day job after a really successful convention we've been to.
Right.
And then can you imagine going from what Ash was doing to going back to work? Like, it's funny because that's horror.
Because he's clean. He's all cleaned up when he's at S-Mart, but he still has all these like cuts and wounds on his face, which is just funny.
And the mechanical hand. That was the part that got me was how are you explaining all? Well, not only that, but if you're explaining it, they can see that you got the mechanical hand, which obviously should stand out even in the 20th century. It should stand out that you have this fully functional mechanical hand. But your story should be a little bit believable. Not, oh yeah, right. Sure. Whatever. Yeah, you're going to become king. I'm sure they believed him after he went to town in S-Mart.
Oh yeah, I think after they saw a demon and then he killed the shit out of that demon.
How great would it have been if he was like, but look at my hand, and somebody else had one and they were like, and
Another thing that was funny, after he kills that demon in S-Mart, he's got the gun, and somehow now he has a rifle holster for the Winchester that he's wearing, kind of like a 6-gun holster. Right. That somehow he's wearing that, and he just puts the rifle down in that holster. It's like, where the hell did that come from?
Those are the writing conversations I'd like to be a part of.
I wonder if they had anyone that was used to writing in soap opera writer rooms or something like that. It's like, it doesn't matter where it came from. We just need it to happen. So-and-so is back from the dead. Their head was chopped off. It doesn't matter.
I get that a lot on collaborations. I'm trying to be like too logical, and they're like, because the story says so. You know,
I've never collaborated with anyone. I don't even know if I would know how.
It's pretty great. I love it.
Yeah, you might just be a nicer person than me.
No, I'm definitely not. But, you know, I mean, I'm willing to collaborate as long as we can get some food, some of that pizza in New York, or some Philly cheesesteaks, you know, whatever. Yeah. We'll talk about that later. So do you guys have any major things left with the film that we haven't touched yet?
Oh, I feel like we did a good job with it.
Where do you think that they should have gone? Like if you were going to immediately launch another movie after this, where do you think they should have gone? Or should they? Is this? I
don't think they should.
Is this the perfect ending?
I think we ended it. I have not, for some reason, I don't know why, watched the TV series Ash and the Evil Dead. Have you guys watched it? Either, no. Mm-mm. Yeah, so that seems like they may have found a natural extension for it, but I feel like I don't know that the story needed to continue, because we know Ash the Warrior from way back in time is now Ash back in the 21st century, and the Deadites are somehow here, and he's going to kick ass. I mean, he's got a rifle that he wears in a hip holster.
God, I love that.
I wonder if he gets an employee discount.
I love how overdone it is too. Like the holster's so big and just gaudy.
It goes down to his shin.
Yeah, it's great. I wish I could write something that terrible.
Yeah, I don't even know how. I don't know how you write something that bizarre and possibly terrible without it actually being terrible, instead of like threading the needle and becoming really kind of brilliant and funny and working.
Challenge accepted.
Good luck. I feel like instead of threading the needle, I'd be like throwing a water balloon at a needle.
That did not work out.
No, and made a mess.
So if you guys don't have anything else, let's take this to film recommendations.
Let's do that.
So this is the part where we tell everybody what they should watch if they enjoyed this. And you actually already talked about one of my two, which was Drag Me to Hell. So I will just credit it to you, and I'm down to one. So go ahead and steal that one as well. What do you got for us, John?
Okay. In the same, we want to continue some Bruce Campbell love. So tonally it's different, but it's based on Joe Lansdale's work, and Joe Lansdale is one of the best writers that we have working today, and also a very nice human being. But Bubba Hotep, have you guys seen that?
Yes, not for a long time, but yes.
Bubba Hotep is a fantastic movie, and for people who don't know what it is, basically we're following Elvis, who is alive, and he's in an old person's home, and he's practically bedridden. And there was an exhibit in town with an Egyptian mummy, and they're down in Texas somewhere or something like that. And somehow there's some sort of accident, and the mummy comes to life, and it begins haunting the halls of this old age home. And Elvis has to sort of rise up and stand against it with the help of Ossie Davis playing John F. Kennedy, which is fucking hilarious.
That's awesome.
It's just genius. It's a brilliant, brilliant movie. And then the other one, if you like comedy that's themed with horror, I think Cabin in the Woods is brilliant. It plays with every trope there is and just does a brilliant job. And it actually manages to be exciting and thrilling in a lot of places, and scary-ish, except that it's just fucking hilarious.
You know, the weirdest thing about that film to me is that the truly scary stuff barely makes it on screen. Like when they're going through some of those other monsters, I'm like, what the fuck is that thing?
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. So like the ballerina turns around and her face is just like a hole with shark's teeth.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I love that shit.
Yeah, it's real. So those are my recommendations for sort of staying in the zone if you liked Army of Darkness.
All right, so I had Drag Me to Hell, but my second one, this one is more like I've been trying to start thinking like, what would I show this as a double feature with? Mm-hmm. And so obviously you could go Evil Dead 2. So I guess I'm throwing those out as recommendations as well. But I came back to House. And I think that House would be an awesome double feature with this.
Yeah, it's got some of that manic quality.
Yep.
And it also it hits a little more of the horror, but it's just weird enough that I think these two would work really well together.
No, I think that's actually a great idea. Totally. It's perfect. Don
has 143 recommendations for us today.
No, I have 139 now because you guys took them. I had House, Cabin in the Woods. I had. I'm going to start off with. I don't know, there's a horror comedy, but since there is a good bit of comedy in this horror themed film, I'm going to start off with Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Because that was the first thing I thought, with the visuals of so many of the people.
Right.
Army of the Dead. I think it's still on Netflix, but as far as that great mix of action, comedy, as well as horror elements. Robin Hood Men in Tights, and to couple that with Blazing Saddles, both from Mel Brooks. Beastmaster, of all things. Came to mind when I was watching this.
Mark
Black Knight. Yeah. Beetlejuice, Black Knight.
Black Knight. I haven't even thought of that. That's great.
See? Anything with the Three Stooges, because of the Three Stooges references throughout the film.
Right.
Hell, anything Trauma should work. Clash of the Titans, Game of Thrones, I threw in there as well. Shaun of the Dead, Big Trouble in Little China, Mars Attacks, From Dusk Till Dawn, Monster Squad, and last but not least, Return of the Living Dead.
Beautiful.
Excellent.
See, this is why I adopted my what would be a great double feature, because I feel like I'm just gonna repeat everything Don would say anyway. So it's like a new game for me instead.
I've never seen Monster Squad.
Oh, you're missing out.
Yeah, I feel like I am missing out. I'm gonna have to rectify that.
It's not one of those movies that you watched in the 80s or early 90s. I can't remember when it came. I know I was a kid when it came out, so it was probably the 80s. It's not one of those movies you go back and then you cringe at watching it.
Right.
I had my daughter watch it, and I actually got some more of the jokes that I didn't get as a kid. I'm not gonna. There are some moments where, as a kid, you didn't get it because some of the stuff was more adult centered.
Right.
And kind of like in SpongeBob and Looney Tunes, they had adult jokes in them. And when you're a kid, goes over your head. When you're an adult, you're like, how the hell did they get away with that? How did they get away with that joke? I can't believe this. It's well worth a watch. I think it might still be on Amazon Prime right now.
I'll check it out.
Excellent. All right. Well, I suppose that about wraps it up. So, John, let's bring it back to you. Where can people find you on social media? Where can they buy the book? And anything else you want to throw out right now?
Let's see. I am on Twitter at John Foster Fic, FIC. And my website is johnfosterfiction.com. And I am on the Book of Face. What the hell is my name on Facebook? I'm looking at it right now. I don't look at myself. I think it's just John Foster.
Cool.
Yeah. So that's where I am, and I think I'm on Instagram too, under some name, but I can't even remember what that is.
I have Instagram. I wouldn't say I open it, so so I know that feeling all too well.
Yeah.
All right. So Rooster comes out on the 20th, and I assume people can buy it all over the place. Amazon, maybe your website.
They can buy it in the usual places. They can also go. The publisher is Gray Matter Press, and you can buy it from them as well. And they've done just a fantastic job with the book. And as usual with my experience with them, they're just a pleasure to work with. So I'm really excited for this.
Tony's just one of those people that I love every interaction I've had with him, so
yeah.
And every book I've read from Gray Matter has been great. Like The Fearing with
with
Taff,
John.
Oh man, that was
so circling back just really fast.
Yeah.
My wife narrated The Fearing.
Really? That's awesome.
Yeah. We're in this weird place now where our business friend circles are completely overlapping now, which is kind of fun.
That's pretty cool.
It's really cool. Yeah.
Nice. No, I had no idea. I gotta She apparently reads everything that I read, so I should just start listening to her, save a lot of time.
Yes, yes. She reads it. She reads it well, and she doesn't do the accents that I do. So.
Nice. All right, so that wraps it up for another week. As always, I am James Sabata.
And I'm Don Guillory.
And we will see you back here at thenecronama.com.